So the different aspects of of the Brahmaviharas are metta, love, karuna, compassion, mudita, sympathetic joy or empathetic joy, and upekkha, equanimity. And each of these has a different mental prompt or a different verbal prompt to help us develop it. For metta, it's may they be happy. For karuna, compassion, may they be free from suffering. For mudita, sympathetic joy, may they not be separated from what they have gained. And the last one, upekkha, we understand karma, that all beings inherit the results of their actions. Whether good or bad, we will inherit the results of our actions. Any action done with intention. This is karma. And so when we think about these four prompts, these four mental prompts, there's a difference between compassion and love. But compassion does come out of love. That love is like a goodwill, a kindness, a friendliness, a care towards a living being. Whereas for the compassion, it's may they be free from suffering. And so with animals, yes, it's much easier to get that feeling of compassion because we feel like they're sometimes quite helpless. And with humans, sometimes we have less compassion for humans because we think, well, I can do it, you can do it. We're kind of like, you can get yourself out of that mess. But yeah, there's a difference. So when you practice these states of mind, we keep them kind of separate, contained, because we're developing different aspects of our mind. So the love overcomes hate, ill will. We're developing a mind that opposes hate and ill will. It's a mind that brings a lot of safety to beings. The compassion, we're developing a lack of cruelty in our mind, where we're practicing concern and assistance. We want to help them come out of their suffering. We don't want to be cruel or malevolent. That's what compassion opposes. With the mudita, may they not be separated from things that they have gained. We're practicing joy in other people's happiness. We want them to have things that make them happy. We're not jealous. We're not greedy when they win the lottery. We're happy for them. We're practicing contentment. We're practicing letting go of desire, avariciousness. And then when it comes to the equanimity, this is something that we need because there's things that we can't help in this world. There's people that we can't assist. There's also horrible, awful, evil people doing terrible things in this world. And it's going to be very hard for you to develop a feeling of love and compassion and joy towards these people. And so when we experience people like that, we have this equanimity, just thinking people arise and perish based on their actions, and they experience karma based on their actions. It's a way for us just to sit, watch, and know what's going on with this understanding that there's a process at play. They're going to get karma. This is something that I cannot help, I cannot even get involved with. I don't want to fall into the place of punishing them, hating them, going down that path. Instead, I just watch with equanimity, understanding that karma is at play. And so these are those 4 states, those 4 Brahmaviharas, the 4 apamanyas, these boundless, limitless states. And those are the mental prompts that we use to develop those feelings. And so when it comes to actually practicing, some people practice them all in one sitting, which I think might be a bit confusing for the mind. But you should probably practice them in cycles, or practice them when you need to practice perhaps one of them. And the love is, it's incredibly beautiful, to feel that love come up in your mind. The compassion is a little bit more emotional because we're thinking, more about people's being suffering and how we kind of want to help them be free from suffering. And sometimes that can be challenging for some people because it's quite overwhelming thinking about all the suffering of the world, isn't it? And something like the mudita, you just learn to kind of get off on other people's happiness. It's like cheap happiness, cheap thrills. You see someone who is happy and has success and is materially well or spiritually well off, and you sympathize with their happiness and it becomes yours. And so it's slightly different, right? And then with the equanimity is really, it's not going to be that kind of thrill that you get from the metta, that thrill of love. It's going to be much more refined and still, and it's steady, and it's just looking, but it's not affected in the same way that the other ones are. Does that make sense? Does anyone have any questions about that?
Which makes it, I think that a lot of people have trouble with that, then feeling love for all us people who are one way or another involved with creating that.
Yes.
So I guess that, of those 4 things you were saying, equanimity is sort of what you've got to go along with to protect yourself from feeling so bad about it.
Yeah, but equanimity is also quite dry and greatly misused by the spiritual community. Because sometimes equanimity is just a cop-out to escape what we're actually feeling. Some people will say to you when your life is falling apart, some spiritual people, just have equanimity. It's like, yes, dear. If I could have equanimity, I wouldn't be crying, And it's very easy for us to just kind of just have equanimity. Just get rid of that uncomfortable feeling that you're making me experience, which is your suffering. We want people to kind of clean up their act so that we don't feel bad. This is sometimes what happens with equanimity. We misuse it. Or we think that we're practicing equanimity, but actually what we're practicing is indifference. We don't care enough. Actually, I don't care enough about you to feel love or hate. That's what we're practicing. But true equanimity, the kind of equanimity that the Buddha talks about, is the kind of equanimity that sees the messed upness of the round and round and round of suffering, endless rebirth in samsara, suffering over and over and over and over again, life after life, losing your parents, shedding your blood, crying your heart out over and over and over again. You see what I'm getting at with this, right?
Yes.
That's the kind of equanimity the Buddha's talking about. When you see that, you're going to need something strong, stable and steady and powerful that allows you to see that suffering without falling apart. And that's why when we look at the suttas, that stage of equanimity only comes after very, very powerful practice. We don't see equanimity coming at like the beginning of the path. We see it all the way, at the pointy end, after it's been stabilized by very deep meditation, samadhi, and when those insights into the true nature of reality are had, that's at the pointy end of the path, and that's when that equanimity really comes into play, because otherwise our minds wouldn't be able to sustain that experience of reality, which is suffering. So that's true equanimity. So it's not indifference. And sometimes people will have this kind of sense that equanimity is just like, I don't care, I'm okay, I'm neutral. It's not quite the same thing. It's much more deep, much more profound.
So is that a bit more like acceptance of the unacceptable? Seeing things as they truly are?
In a way, seeing things as they truly are is not seeing them as you want them to be, you know. And a good example of this was watching a documentary with a friend of mine at the movies many years ago, and it was quite confronting. It's about people who were suffering. And he couldn't look. He kept on averting his eyes, covering his eyes. And so there's me, God, just thinking of me, because like, you have to look. We have to know what suffering is. You know, this is what the Buddha taught, right? It's like the first noble truth. Like, you have to understand what suffering is. And he's not talking about just having a bad day at work. He's talking about those things that I was referring to before, like, you know, samsara, this round of rebirth. And so my friend, he wasn't looking at all. He didn't want to look. He didn't want to know. And so there's some sort of denial there that's involved in that kind of thinking. You know, you don't want to see. I don't want to look. And think about how this plays out in our own lives. You see a homeless person, what's the first thing you do? Just turn the other way. It's not there. You see starving children on the news, what do? Change the channel. You hear about the effects of climate change, you just turn the page and do the crossword. Like this is kind of our tendency. And this is the same on those kind of global issues as it is with our personal issues. Like, we're getting old. We get sick. We're going to die. We hide these from our mind. We hide things like our thoughts, our less desirable qualities from ourselves and others, our lies, our hate. You know, we hide this from ourselves and hide this from others. So when we practice the Buddhist path, we're trying to see these more clearly, without judgment. We're trying to see them so that we can respond appropriately to what is actually happening. And when it comes to seeing the world clearly, you know, the world is messed up. People are messed up. Our response is, I don't want to be a messed up person in a messed up world. I'm going to try our best, you know, to be our best and eventually to escape this round of suffering, which is samsara. So that's kind of the big Buddhist project. One of the things that will help us is to develop these minds of love and happiness and compassion and gladness, and also to develop that mind of steadiness, that on-lookingness that allows us to see clearly without flinching. Because if we only had the good bits, right, if we only had the love and the compassion, we feel pretty good as spiritual beings, we wouldn't want to leave, wouldn't want to escape, wouldn't want to complete the Buddhist project of liberation, you know. And so this is why we practice these Brahmaviharas. Also because some of our meditation practice can become quite dry, and these really make it really a very emotional practice which connects with other beings. And it's that intersection of our personal private practice with the rest of the world. You know, that's why these practices are very beautiful and part of the Buddhist path.